The advice and opinions expressed by the host of Autism Live and her guests are meant solely as suggestion and should not be in any way construed as child-specific advice. The Center for Autism and Related Disorders advises working with a board-certified behavior analyst who has experience with autism before starting any intensive behavioral intervention. Any choices you make in determining your child's treatment are completely at your own discretion.
Good morning and welcome to Autism Live. I'm Shannon Penrod. We're webcasting to you live from the Center for Autism and Related Disorders headquarters in Tarzana, California. Welcome. It's Tuesday. It's been a long time since we've been with you because we weren't here yesterday, but we are live today. We'll be with you for the next 2 hours talking about autism from a 360-degree perspective. Wherever you are on the spectrum, whether you are a parent, teacher, practitioner working with an individual on the autism spectrum, or you might be an individual who is on the spectrum yourself, we hope that we can be a resource for you, someplace where you can come to get answers to your questions and maybe find even more questions. Because we know that part of this journey is knowing which question to ask at which time, right? Because only then can you start to get substantive answers. We know here that there has been so much progress in the field of autism, and there are so many things that can be done to help a person progress to another level that they would like to get to. Nobody's presuming what that level might be because I think different people are looking for different answers. But we hope to be that resource for you to help you on this journey. I like to remind you at the start of the show that there are many different ways you can get in contact with us because this entire show, the next 2 hours, is meant to be interactive. It's a place for you to speak your mind and ask us questions, but also tell us what's going on with you and what you want to talk about. So Emily is showing you can get a hold of us here at www.autism-live.com. The show plays there live. It's not the only place it plays live. But when you do go to that autism-live.com, there is a live feature, a white box that you can put your cursor there, type away, hit enter. It shows up magically right here on our screen. We have the opportunity to interact in real time. That does not cost anything. It is totally free. I love being able to say that. And you don't have to log in. It's not one of those things, well, you're just 7 steps away from asking your question. It's instant gratification, which I truly, truly love. And in that way, we can have the conversation going back and forth. It's not the only way, and Emily's showing you and did show you other ways that you get in contact with us. Want to remind you that you can watch us live now on YouTube as well. I hope that while you're on YouTube that you'll take this time to subscribe to our channel. We put whole episodes up there, but also highlights from the different episodes. If you miss an episode and you go, I don't have time to watch the whole thing and I don't want to fast forward through the whole thing, sometimes you can just catch the highlight, 1 or 2 highlights from the show and give you the information that you want. You can also search keywords to find videos that we've done. I'm told that we are getting close to our 400th episode. And you figure 2 hours a pop, there's a lot of information. And of course, sometimes we repeat ourselves. But what I love is that sometimes we'll have one expert who comes on and maybe talks about potty training. And then a month later, we have another expert who comes on and talks about potty training. So you can hear it from different people, because sometimes people can be saying the same exact thing, but you hear it from somebody in a different way and it just clicks, right? So, but if you don't find what you're looking for, please let us know, because we aim to help. And part of the reason why we do that, I always remind people at the start of the show, I am not an expert in autism. Oh no, my friends, not I. We have experts who come on the show on a regular basis, but I'm a mom. That's what my credential is. That's why I'm in the chair. I'm a mom who cares very passionately about our kids. My son was diagnosed with autism at the age of 2.5. He's now 10. And we got a lot of help at the right time in the right way from the right people. And I didn't get that help because I could afford afford it because I couldn't. And I didn't get it because I was so smart and knew where to go to find it. I got that help because other parents helped point us to the places that we needed to go. I'm forever grateful, and sort of my bargain that I made to the universe, I said, please help me to help my child, and then I will turn around and do whatever I can to help people coming along the way and spread the word. So that's why I'm here. I have a lot to pay forward. Make me do it. Ask me questions. Make me hunt down answers for you. Make me find an expert to be on the show. I dare you. There we have it. Okay, so this entire show, as I said, is meant to be interactive, and one of the things that we like to start with every morning is something we call the jargon of the day. This is when we take on one word, one phrase, one acronym. We give you the actual definition of it, which is sometimes filled with more jargon. And then we try to give it to you in a working definition, a way that we can all start to begin to apply this to our own lives and figure out why it's important that we would take the time to learn this jargon term. How is it going to really show up in our lives? So today, our jargon term is token economy. We've talked about this on the show frequently because sometimes having a token economy can be just the right answer, depending on the circumstance. So let's take a look at what our actual definition is. Token economy, earning generalized conditioned reinforcers as an immediate consequence for specific behaviors, then exchange them for backup reinforcers. Say what? Earning generalized conditioned reinforcers as an immediate consequence for specific behaviors, then exchange them for backup reinforcers. You think, I don't really know what that means, and have I experienced this before? This has nothing to do with me, and yet it really does. We all function on a token economy. Our working definition: when a child earns tokens, stickers, coins, or something else that is motivating so that they can trade it for something else. And if you think about it, we all do function every day on a token economy. That's what money is. I want to be able to buy groceries, and I'm not going to bring my cow to the marketplace and try to trade the milk for the groceries anymore, although there are a lot of people who are going back to the barter system, bless you. But for a lot of us, we have to have something intermediary that allows us to behave in a certain way, get rewarded for it, so we can turn that into something else down the road. So I come to work, I get a paycheck, it comes on a piece of paper, I get to trade that in for tokens, money that I can go buy things with. And think about all the different ways that you can trade money, right? You can turn it into different kinds of currency. You can have it on your debit card. You can have it on your credit card. It can just sit in the bank. There are lots of different things that you can do with your money and lots of different ways that you can trade it. Well, there are easily that many ways that we can do a token economy. Why do we do a token economy? Because sometimes, we know, and we talk about this on the show all the time, it's so important that we reward good behavior, right? We know that that's the key to making behavior happen more and more often. If we reward and reward immediately, we don't want to be waiting forever to give the reward, because if we wait forever, the person, child on the spectrum, person not on the spectrum, adult, on or off the spectrum, we all will get impatient at some point. If you're asking me to do something hard and you promise me that you're going to serve me chocolate cake for it, and I really want the chocolate cake and I'm working really hard, and then you say, oh, we don't have chocolate cake, we're going to be able to give it you tomorrow. Like, why did I just do all that hard work, right? And eventually, if you keep doing that, I'm just going to say, nah, I'm not doing the work. Show me the chocolate cake first, right? Our kids are like that too. We want to make sure that we get there. On the flip side of it, if we do it properly, if I say to you, hey, you're going to do all this work and I'm going to give you a piece of chocolate cake, and you're doing the work, and the second that you do the work, I shovel the chocolate cake in your mouth, you go, wow, this thing works. I do this, I get the chocolate cake, and if you really love chocolate cake, if you really love it, you're going to go back and do that again. And if I give you chocolate cake instantly again, we're going to see that you're just going to be doing whatever that thing I asked you to do more often. But sometimes you don't have the chocolate cake right now. or you can't serve it right now. Sometimes it's not convenient. So that's why we put in a token economy, so that we have a convenient way of giving an instant reward that is going to turn into the real reward later on. So think about when you're in the grocery store, and the thing that's really truly reinforcing to your child is something you can't be doing in a grocery store. Maybe it's playing a game on the big TV at home, and you're not going to lug the big TV to the grocery store and get a battery pack. It's not practical, right? So, but you know that that's the real thing that's going to motivate your child to behave in the grocery store, is if they're going to win being able to play on the big TV at home. So now you have some sort of a token economy, a card or something, and you say to the child, and you're very clear about it, we're going to go into the grocery store. You need to earn these 3 tokens, and when you get the 3 tokens, the minute we get home, you're going to get to play on the big TV, right? So they're sort of like placeholders. You're going to trade these 3 tokens in, you're going to get the reward that you want. I can do that. We went to the zoo the other day, and I kept tokens on my hand with a pen because I didn't want to have other things. So I can do that. You can get them on your phone. You can download free token economies on your phone, and you can customize them so that the little tokens look a certain way. For years, before the smartphones, we had little cards that had Velcro stickers, and we changed the stickers. So one month it was Batman, and another month it was Spider-Man. For a little girl, it might be Hello Kitty stickers. We want to make it really reinforcing, but the truth is it's just a placeholder until we can get to the place where we can give that big reinforcement. Now, here's the key with token economies. It has to be clear. All parties need to have an understanding of what's going to happen, and even more important than that, those tokens have to translate into a real reward at the first possible moment that they can. In the beginning, when my son was just learning about how this worked, he was little, had very little receptive language, and so you think to yourself, how can I possibly make it clear to him what's going to happen? And they would start with just stars or checks on a piece of paper. So he would do, they would ask him to do something, and he would do it, and they would make the little star on the piece of paper, and he didn't know what that was. He looked at it, and so when he got 3 stars or 2 stars or whatever it was in the beginning, I remember Peter Farrag holding it up and saying, "You got 2 stars, now we get to play," or whatever it was that was reinforcing to him. So make sure that you take the time, and in the beginning it was things that he, it was very easy for him to do, so that they could set up, this is what's going to happen. My son has a token economy at school. Over the years, it's changed. Now it's a sheet that he gets, and he gets to check off a box for how he thinks he did during class. Then the teacher talks about it with him, and if he gets enough check marks, and it changes month to month based on how hard we want him to be working and where we are as we're moving the goalpost further away, he gets to trade. If he gets a certain amount, then he gets to trade that for video game time, because that's the big reinforcer right now. But this can be literally anything. And, a lot of times we talk on the show about giving your children rewards for everything, but Dr. Adele Nadowski was in here on Friday and said, but the truth of the matter is your kids already want things. And when they say, I want this, or they let you know I want this, then that's a great way that you can find out what really reinforces them and trade that in for other things. They say, I really want to be able to play video games. Great. As soon as you do this, you're going to get this, right? So make sure that everything is, that you're using every possible thing that you can to reinforce them, to get them to do the behaviors that you want to do. And a token economy can help you to do that. When you're out and about or someplace where, you just can't give that immediate reinforcement, it becomes the way to keep them reinforced until you can give them the reinforcer. It works. That's the key thing you need to know, is that it works. If you are willing to be consistent and clear with it, it absolutely works. So that is our jargon of the day. We always have a question of the day for you. And our question today, I can't wait to see what you guys write in on the Facebook page. It is, what triggers your child to melt down in public places? What triggers your child to melt down in public places? We know that there are lots of different things that happen that create tantrums and meltdowns, and so we're asking you what triggers. It's kind of like asking you what's the antecedent, one of our other jargon terms. What's happening that sets the whole thing in motion? And so we'll look forward to looking a little bit later on Facebook. I can't wait to see what you guys say. And by the way, it's great when you write in on Facebook or let us know in other ways, because sometimes you'll write something in that you have figured out that somebody else needs to hear, that they've never even thought about, that they've been having these meltdowns, and you write in and say, oh, well, you know, when I feed my child red licorice, I'm going to have a meltdown right afterwards. And somebody else who doesn't know that sometimes red dye, red lake, what is it, 40, in some kids can trigger meltdowns. And they go, wow, I never even thought about that. And then they start to look and say, oh my goodness, it's right after he's had red food coloring. Within an hour, we have a meltdown. And in that way, we all help each other. So write it in. You'll be helping yourself and helping someone else as well. We always have a topic of our week. And this week, I'm very excited. I know it's not anybody's favorite subject, but getting it taken care of is. We're talking about tantrums and meltdowns this week. Tantrums and meltdowns, boy, we talked about compliance last week, and compliance is great, but when you have tantrums and meltdowns and they come on a fairly regular basis, or they are so epic in their scope, you begin to get, correct me if I'm wrong, but I know I felt this way as a parent, and I know other parents have said this too, you start to be so afraid of what if a tantrum happens that it changes the way you go about your life. That, you know, you're supposed to go to the birthday party and you go, oh, you know, I'm so afraid that she's going to have a tantrum or a meltdown while we're there, because that happened the last time, that you find yourself not going to things that you would have before, or being nervous while you're there and not enjoying it. You know what I'm saying? So the tantrums, it like mushroom clouds into things and affects other things. So we're going to really be taking this on this week and talking about what causes tantrums, what causes meltdowns, what's the difference between the two, and what do we have in our tool belt that can help us in a tantrum, in a meltdown, and to prevent them, and also to get it to stop while it's happening. That's probably one of the hardest things, but we're going to talk about all of that, and we're going to discuss that with some of our experts. Really fascinating topic of discussion. Some of the different things that we have going on here today, we have our healthy eating tip, and I'm very excited to bring that to you today. We will be talking about challenging behavior through the guise of tantrums and meltdowns, and as I mentioned on Friday, very special guest today, Bryce Miler, is going to be with us in the second hour of the show. Bryce has been with us on the show before. She's the mom that I talk about. Her story, her child and her own story are featured in a documentary called Recovered, because Bryce's son did recover from autism. Now, that in and of itself, we could talk about that endlessly, right? Because that's way cool. And Bryce is way cool, and her son is way cool. But that's not why we're having Bryce on today. I know. What are we doing? Bryce also happens to be an insurance expert. And by the way, she was an insurance expert before her child was diagnosed with autism. And her son is probably 20, 21 now at this point. So she was one of those early pioneers of autism, but she was working in the field of insurance. And her son got great quality ABA therapy, subsequently recovered, and she was still working in the field of insurance. And so when insurance reform started to happen, the Center for Autism and Related Disorders approached her and said, we need an insurance expert who knows something about autism. You seem to be uniquely qualified in these areas. Would you like to come and work for us? And so she is the head of contracts at the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. I would argue that she is the greatest mind in terms of insurance and insurance coverage having to do with autism that is available. And So she's going to be with us talking about some insurance reform things happening. And I mentioned that there are 2 seminars that are coming up in New York week after next, free seminars that Bryce is going to be speaking at about some of the things, because in New York, a lot has changed and more of you are covered today than you were 3 months ago. That's very exciting. So Bryce is going to be here with us, especially for those of you in New York. You're going to want to ask questions. Make sure you do that on the live feature. You can start doing that now. And for those of you who aren't in New York, Bryce is going to have some really great tips that are good for all of us. Very eye-opening. So make sure that you're here for the next hour for that. We've got a lot of questions that have come in on the live feed. We're going to answer some of those. Some of them we're going to wait until we can have a BCBA in here with us talking about that, because they're behavioral in nature, but some of them we can take on without waiting for that. So all of that and much more, and your questions on the live feature starting now. We're going to take a short break. We'll be back with a healthy eating tip of the week. Stick with us.
Hey guys, for the month of September, I figured I'd show you guys how to make a task completion chart to help your kids get through the hardest parts of the day. Parents have been writing into our host, Shannon Penrod, the hardest parts of the day are waking up in the morning, after school, and getting ready for bed. Please keep in mind you can always modify the task completion chart to focus on the skills that your family needs most. The template we'll be using today to make the task completion chart you can find at facebook.com/autism-live. All right, let's get to it. The materials you'll be needing are the template, cardstock, scissors, hole puncher, glue, pipe cleaner, Velcro, and photos or images. We find it more reinforcing for kids if you use images of themselves doing the tasks that you're trying to get them to complete. So what I have here to start off are photos of myself doing all the tasks that we're going to add to our task completion chart today. The first step you're going to be doing is printing the template from facebook.com/autism-live. I have it here, and the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to trim at the top. We don't need that, that's just totally excess. Now that I trim my 3 templates, I'm going to label each one with a different part of the day that we're focusing on, such as waking up, after school, and getting ready for bed. Now that I finished labeling the templates with the appropriate time of the day, I'm going to attach the photos that go with it. For bedtime, the tasks I chose were getting ready for school, putting away toys, putting on pajamas, and brushing teeth. Now repeat this for all the rest of the day. Now that I've added the photos to the template, I am taking this along with my heavy cardstock to hold all my tokens. I'm going to line them up and make 3 hole punches. I'm going to take this pipe cleaner and attach the pages together with it. We're almost done putting this together. Next, I'm going to take my Velcro. I'm going to put them underneath each picture. And then I'm going to add 4 on the very edge too. Now that I've attached the rough side of the Velcro to the template, now I'm going to take the softer side and add these to the tokens. You can use whatever you want for the tokens, whatever your child finds reinforcing. They could be stickers, images, spacemen, Pokemon, whatever they like. Before you use your task completion chart, it's really important that you do a preference assessment to see what your child finds reinforcing that day. Once you have that established, then you can tell them the rule for how this task completion chart works. So every time they get one of their tasks completed, they add a token to it. And the way the task completion chart functions is like a token economy. So after they put a token under each one of these tasks, they can trade it in for their reinforcer for the day. Now that you've made your task completion chart, hopefully your child will be able to use it on a daily basis and help them through those difficult times of the day. Well, until next time, craft on. Bye, guys.
Can you see me flying by your side?
Welcome back to Autism Live. It is time for our healthy eating tip of the week. This is the time of the week when we talk about facing some of the different issues that we're faced with and figuring out how to do the food through them. So this week in particular, I want to talk to you about cravings. If a lot of times parents will write in and say, my child will only eat these two things. And by the way, this is for children on the spectrum and children off the spectrum. So often I'll be someplace at a birthday party or something like that, and the moms and sometimes the dads start to talk about, oh, my child, they're so finicky, they only want to do this, they crave this, they just love, and then fill in the blank. For some kids, it's nachos. For other kids, it's pizza. That's all they want to eat. For a lot of kids, it's macaroni and cheese. For many kids in the United States, it's having chicken nuggets and French fries. Now, if you stop and think about all those things I just listed, what do they all have in common? By the way, potatoes are a big thing, too, for our kids, that they want to have potatoes, whether it's French fries or potato chips. What do all these things have in common? They're really carb heavy. And we talked about this a couple of weeks ago. If you have the opportunity, I would advise you to watch Super Size Me. It's a great documentary. I believe it's available on Netflix. I'm not 100% sure about that. But basically a very healthy guy who works out and eats healthily decides that for 30 days he's going to eat nothing but fast food. And within that fast food, every day he's going to make sure he has a salad, so it's not completely without green vegetables, but he's going to severely increase his uptake of things that are laden with chemicals and have a lot of yeast in them and are very carb heavy. And what we see is that the first couple of days he goes, oh my gosh, I just don't even want to eat it. I don't want to participate. I don't want to have anything to do with it. But as time goes on, the longer he stays on this diet, he begins to crave it. He doesn't want to eat the things that he was missing in the first week because his body is at a point where it's feeding on itself at this point. He's got a yeast imbalance and there are a lot of other medical explanations for it, but his body begins to crave these things that are no longer good for him. So, it's important for us to look at our kids' diets as much as we look at our own diets and say, okay, what am I eating a lot of? How balanced is my diet? Is there something that I'm craving? Is there something that I'm eating too much? And look at our children and see what are they drawn to. I like to put things on a plate and then watch the order in which my son eats them. I gave him a quinoa salad the other day that had a bunch of ingredients that he absolutely loved. He's not wild about quinoa. Let's be honest about this. But I filled the rest of the salad with a bunch of things that he does love. For instance, there were artichoke hearts chopped up in it, which my child absolutely adores. There were black olives, which he absolutely adores. There were garbanzo beans, which I don't know. It's a texture thing. My son loves hummus, not so much about the garbanzo beans. I'm trying to think what else was in the salad. There were chopped up tomatoes. There were chopped up cucumbers, all of which my son loves. And it was fascinating to watch what order he ate the things on the plate. Very telling to me because there was a hierarchy and he didn't just do it. I was eating the quinoa salad and having a lovely spoonful that had all the good things in it. He was picking out the things one at a time. But it's important that we look at it and say, okay, what's the child really focused on? There was a period of time in which my son, all he wanted was potatoes. He wanted mashed potatoes, he wanted baked potatoes, he wanted French fries, he wanted potato chips. And anytime we would go someplace, that was what he would eat first. And eventually we got into a point where that's all he wanted to eat. My son who eats vegetables, I have to monitor that and be really careful. And if you see that there is something that the child wants to eat constantly, that's their go-to, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's a bad thing, but you want to look at it. You want to put an eye to it and say, all right, can I mix this with other things? First of all, is there a way that I can make this dish the healthiest possible dish that I can? So if we look at macaroni and cheese, right? There are many ways to make macaroni and cheese, some that are healthy and some that aren't as healthy. You can make it as fat-ridden and as cholesterol-ridden as you want, right? But we are featuring a recipe on our site that you can look at in the What's Left that's called Mac and No Cheese. That's one of the primary ingredients of it is a butternut squash soup instead of all the cheese. It still does have a fake cheese in it that's a Daiya cheese, still very healthy, but the vast majority of what's making the orange color is the butternut squash soup, which which adds a little bit of sweetness to it that kids love. They absolutely love it. So, there is a healthier way to make the macaroni and cheese. And by the way, you don't have to use a wheat pasta. And, if your child is somebody who can handle wheat, you can make it a whole wheat pasta, but you can also make it a brown rice pasta, still have it taste good. So make the dish as healthy as you possibly can. The chicken nuggets, we have many recipes on the site for chicken nuggets. There are ways to do it that are so much healthier and don't have all the chemical ingredients, nothing artificial, still healthy and taste good, and the children gobble them up. So make it as healthy as possible, but do look and see if there's a food that if there has been a food that's all the child wants to eat to the exclusion of everything else, it may be time to take the child off of that food altogether for a period of time and to see if there is a behavior shift. I know it sounds scary, it sounds frightening. You don't want to do anything cold turkey. You want to move slow. First go to the healthier version and then mix in other things into the diet and slowly wean them off of that particular food for a period of time. I would say, if you can, a 30-day period, and just notice, does my child behave any differently? Sometimes these foods that are craved to the point of nothing else are creating problems that we can't necessarily see. You can also have the child do an allergy test to see, but sometimes it is just a minimal, they're not even allergic to it, but it's creating an environment in which it makes it harder for them to learn, makes it harder for them to behave. And we're talking about tantrums and meltdowns this week. Sometimes they trigger meltdowns. Yes. So something to look at. If they're craving something to the point, nothing else, you got to take a look at it. That's our healthy eating tip for today. We're going to be right back after these messages.
You say howdy, we say hi. Let's get rowdy, let's get wild. Let's get wild. Let's get wild. Let's get wild. Let's get wild.
Hi, Lisa Ackerman from Taka here to do some more cooking. Are you ready? Allergy-friendly fun, and I've got a guest.
I'm Jamie Davis. Yes, I'm her sister.
Today we're all about cooking something really fun and healthy. That's a dessert. We're going to actually use carrots, real carrots, and we're going to talk about how to make the best tasting carrot cake you could ever hope for. So it's really easy. You don't want to buy the carrots that are the baby carrots. Why?
Well, those aren't really carrots. What they do is they take carrots, they mush them all up, they take whatever the carrot looks like, they throw it in a bin, they bleach them, and they process them, and then they have a little machine that makes them into little formed baby carrots. So they're really not born that way.
So this is what a carrot really looks like?
Yeah.
Awesome. Good to know. So I just want to show everybody how to make really simply. We just washed off the carrots. They were really dirty from the farmer's market. And we're going to throw them in to our food processor. So what's good about the food processor is that we can go for a really fine grade. So I'm going to go ahead and add the 3 cups of carrots. Then the next thing I'm going to pull in is our gluten-free, casein-free flours. I'm using a protein-based flour. Bob's Red Mill is great. I also have my flaxseed meal and pure cane sugar, that's organic. I cut it down already, so you don't need to cut it again.
And one of the reasons why we like to use organic sugar is because, once again, most sugars on the market are bleached to make them look perfect.
Yeah, we don't like perfect.
No.
We like ours.
That's why we like each other.
All right, so we've added our baking soda, baking powder, xanthan gum, nutmeg, and salt. Now, again, why we use the gums is that's the ingredient that actually holds the flour together. Regular flour automatically has that gluten. This is the replacement to the gluten. These are the secret ingredients for the cake itself. 3/4 cup of the crushed pineapple is in there. That gives it a beautiful texture and flavor. And now what I'm using is the oil. What are your favorite oils, Jamie?
I like using coconut oil any chance I
Yes.
get. In fact, coconut oil would be excellent in the carrot cake.
Now what I did was I reserved a little bit of the oil and we placed it in the bottom of that pan so it doesn't stick.
Yep.
But we love the baking stones.
Yes.
Why do we love the baking stones?
Evenly cooks
Yes.
and easy cleanup.
If you like crispy, you got to get a baking stone. I also feel that they're less toxic. So now I'm going to cook this thing at 350 for about 35 minutes. You really want to get it golden. Let's get it in there. Awesome. So now that we got our cake all done, let's get on with the frosting. Coconut oil, probably the best thing in the world you can eat. It's so good for your brain. It's one of the best oils that we can use. So I'm going to use a 1/3 cup of the coconut oil, the gouche, and then we're going to do 1 teaspoon of an organic vanilla, Madagascar, and make sure it's alcohol free. And then what we're going to do is add 16 ounces of organic powdered sugar, and we're going to add our 4 to 6 tablespoons of coconut milk. I'm using the whisk version here on the KitchenAid, which will give it a nice mix. All right, so if you get any on the sides, you just come on in with your little spatula, and this makes the best frosting for the cake. So we're almost done whipping it up, and voila! We are talking good stuff right here. We have the best situation for the best birthday cake, especially if you want to deal with something that perhaps has a little less sugar. You've got a great cake that no one will know the difference. I'm not a decorator. I don't like to decorate. I just want to eat it, and I don't care what it looks like. Ask my family. I'm a family with autism. I just want to eat the cake. Are you ready to do this? It can be your birthday. Yay! So to me, this is so good. It's meant to be gooey, as you can see. But what I love about this is a great birthday cake with extra frosting to make your kids happy. A little less sugar and a lot of love. So if you have any questions, we'd love to hear from you. You can email us at autismlive@gmail.com, and on Facebook, Facebook.com/autismlive. And then you can reach me and Jamie and get some more ideas from the Taco recipe side. So let's have some more cake.
We say howdy, we say hi. Let's get rowdy, let's get wild. Let's get wild.
Welcome back to Autism Live. We have a special announcement that I want to make. For those of you who are in the military or military families, there are a series of free autism trainings that are coming up. They're being done by Thomas M. Caffrey. He is a board-certified behavior analyst. And these are coming to you from the Foundation for Autism Training and Education, which stands for FATE, F-A-T-E, Foundation for Autism Training and Education. The project is called Project Patriot. It's an initiative to provide support to military families who have children with autism. FATE is a nonprofit organization providing targeted training for parents and teachers working with children with autism in public schools. So FATE has scheduled 4 free workshops beginning this October in United States cities chosen for their significant military presence. So the 4 cities are Seattle, Washington, San Diego, California, Austin, Texas, and Pensacola, Florida. They're 2-day workshops entitled Introduction to Applied Behavior Analysis and Teaching Verbal Behavior in the Classroom. And they will be conducted, as I said, by Thomas M. Caffrey. He is a BCBA. If you would like more information about these workshops, you can go to www.tomcaffrey.com, CAFFREY.com. It lists each one of the different workshops. There is a link that you can press on the link so that you can go to that individual site, find out more information about the dates and about RSVPing, because there will be a limited number of seats. But it's a 2-day free workshop. You don't hear that very often. Tom is a parent of a child with autism. So, you know, you're getting a BCBA who has a child who's on the spectrum. Great, great resource. He is internationally recognized speaker and has extensive information and has, if you go to his site, you can also watch videos that he has done as well. So want to let you know that those are workshops that are coming up, And again, to find out the individual dates for each one, again, that's Seattle, San Diego, Austin, and Pensacola. They are provided by the FATE, the Foundation for Autism Training and Education. And the project is called Project Patriot. This is just for families who are serving in the military. We will keep you posted on that. We'll even see if we can get Thomas Caffrey on the show. But if you are living close to one of those cities and know someone who is a military family close to one of those cities, I would encourage you to check that out. We're going to take a message and come back to look at your answers to the question of the day. The question of the day was, what triggers your child to melt down in public places? You can be answering the question on Facebook. I'll go over some of those answers when we come back. Stick with us.
Hi, I'm Sandy Oshiro, and I'm here with Kathy Gaw of Danny's Farm. Tell us a little bit about the programs and what you provide here.
Danny's Farm was founded in 2007, sensing the growing need for adults aging out, needing employment opportunities, and wondering ourselves, what is Danny going to do when he grows up? That was the birth of Danny's Farm, to have a safe, nurturing, loving place that serves children and employs adults with disabilities.
Louis has been here for about 5 or 6 years. We were looking for a place we could have him after school that would help his social skills. They help him with his accountabilities in terms of taking care of the animals. I think having the petting zoo here has been a great help for him.
I'm auntie to Tatiana Munoz, and she just loves the animals, and it does help her to react really good. And since she's nonverbal, it seems like she relates with the animals even better.
There's things here that he likes to do, and he's really made some great friends here.
He has like this inborn compassion, and to see him with other kids when he starts to warm up with them, and then see how he likes to take care of the animals. It's like, I know that's one of his strong points, and he gets to kind of nurture that here and express that.
We hope to see him working with Danny's Farm one day, and it gives us hope.
Well, Danny's Farm has been in my life for 4 years, and it's a very wonderful experience. It's downright amazing, and I just love taking care of kids. And most of the time, I'm usually just trying to make sure that the animals don't bum rush the guys.
To keep the kids safe?
Yeah, that's my primary goal. Think of me as the enforcer of the farm.
Do you love Danny's Farm?
Love it with all my heart. I can go there any day and never be bored. If you want to have a wonderful animal experience, come on by to Danny's Farm, all the way down in Pomona. Thank you very much for visiting. My name is Danny Gott, signing out.
Welcome back to Autism Live. Love that Danny's Farm video. We ask you a question of the day every day, and our question today was, what triggers your child to melt down in public places? And you guys have been writing in, and loving when you guys participate, because it helps inform other people about what are potential causes of triggering a meltdown. Let's stop for just a second and talk about what's the difference between a tantrum and a meltdown. And I think different people have different criteria, but for our purposes, I think that a meltdown, tantrums happen on a regular basis, right? And they are a normal part of development. Almost all children are going to tantrum at some point. And tantrums generally come from frustration to start with, and over time, tantrums will continue to happen and grow in severity if they are effective. I'm sure I know some adults who still throw tantrums, and you probably do too, unfortunately, and they do it because it works. It's very effective. Meltdowns are something different. Meltdowns are when there's a tantrum, there's something fairly well defined that a person wants, and that's why they're throwing the tantrum. Sometimes you got to be a little bit of an investigative reporter to figure out what exactly is causing the tantrum, but meltdowns most often have some sort of an environmental component. It's a tantrum that's super juiced by something else that's throwing things off. So I might get upset with you if you step on my foot, right? And on a normal day, you step on my foot and I go, ow, and you say, I'm so sorry, and I go, it's okay, I know you didn't mean to do it. But if I'm overtired, and have had no sleep and I'm overstressed and you step on my foot, you know, and I'm having a really bad day, heaven knows I might start to cry and then cry about everything that's wrong in the world, right? That's what we'd call the meltdown. So meltdown is when there's more than what's going on in the moment, the need that's being had, and there's some sort of environmental component that's making it that much worse. And that's really how we have to start to look at meltdowns, because there is almost always some sort of external environmental component that makes it really difficult to pull everything out of the ashes. And there's nothing worse, right, than when the tantrum becomes a public meltdown. You're out someplace, you're at the grocery store, and there you go, there is no rhyme or reason to this, and the child is inconsolable and sometimes violent, and you know, things very quickly deteriorate. There's one epic meltdown that my child had when I picked him up from kindergarten one day that will be with me forever in my memory. You know what I'm saying? And at least I am at the point several years later where I have a sense of humor about it. But on that day, can I just say there was no sense of humor? I was in tears and feeling as though, you know, my whole life was in that moment. Horrifying, horrifying. So let's read some of your answers to this question of what triggers your child to have a meltdown in public. Somebody wrote in and said, thank God I haven't had a meltdown crisis in years. However, broken promises or changed plans can still come so close. Yes, different directions, getting somewhere, last minute change of plans on where we go, usually the triggers. Very interesting. Somebody else who says loud noises and being out of his environment. Someone else says crowds. Again, stress, crowds, and anything. Someone else who says, I don't, and don't even get me started on all of the automatic things in the bathrooms these days. LOL, eek. Yeah, all, you know, the blowers and oh, crazy, crazy stuff, right? Okay, and that person had said, it can be as simple as going left when he thought we were going right, walking on the blue tile when we're supposed to stay on the rug, or as language-based as he doesn't process everything that I have said and then only gets the last part of the sentence, which sounds horribly unfair and incomplete. Then there is the noise levels, smells, lights, people brushing up against his body. LOL. Yeah, keeping the sense of humor. I love that you're keeping the sense of humor. Oh, and if we pass an escalator or elevator, we have to use them. Oh my, bless your heart. Another person who says not going the right way or getting something she wants. Kind of typical of that last one, but the meltdown isn't. Sometimes I have no idea. That's very key sometimes too. Someone else who wrote in and said sudden loud noises and crowds. He panics. Another person who says loud noises and not getting his way. Someone else who says when they take away certain things at the table or it's just one of those days. And again, someone else says noise and crowds, and says it's exactly as another person said. And we have another one who says when places are too loud and crowded. Okay, so the vast majority of them talked about crowds and loud noises. So let's talk for a couple of seconds about that. And I don't know if any of you who are watching have sensory issues with loud noises and crowds. I will tell you that I am somebody who gets car sick on a stationary bicycle, right? I'm not kidding. People think that that's a joke. I get car sick on a treadmill. I have some sort of inner ear imbalance that I'm dizzy all the time. And in certain times of the year, it's worse, right? During allergy season, it just makes it that much worse. So when I go into a building that has a very high ceiling, there is an extra element to it that makes me extra dizzy. So I'm very in tune with kids that go into big places or when they're outdoors, even being outdoors. I mean, the sky is significantly higher than me. It can make me dizzy. But when I was a kid, I didn't understand that that's all it was, that I was dizzy and that I didn't need to panic about it. And when I was a kid, it was stressful for me sometimes where I just feel out of sorts, you know, uneven, and odd. It wasn't a pleasant feeling for me. I know some people like the feeling of feeling dizzy. Not so much for me. not so much for me. So I really have an affinity for kids who go into big places and crowded places and they feel like, you know, this isn't working well for me. Now, we don't have to leave it at that, though, but we certainly want to have an appreciation for why it would be overwhelming. Think about all the things that are bombarding you when you're in a big space with a big crowd, all the noises, all the smells, not being able to maintain your personal space times. Sometimes somebody had talked about people brushing up against him. You know, think about how much of a loss of control there is in those environments. When you're at home and the smells and your personal space are a thing that you're used to, right? You have a little bit more control. So there's that element of loss of control and just being bombarded sensory-wise. I always think about, my mother went to Branson, Missouri. My mother loved to quilt. Very reinforcing to her to look at fabrics, right? She went to Branson, Missouri, and she walked into a quilt store. I was not with her, but I was talking to her about it a couple of days later. And I said, oh, I hear they have this epic quilting store. And she said, yeah, I went in and I had to turn around and leave. And I said, what do you mean? What happened? And she said, it was too much. It was overwhelming. There were too many things to look at. I couldn't process it. I turned around and walked out. And that was something that was very reinforcing to her. Think about a time when so many things came at you visually that it was too much. You may be somebody who can process all of that, but for some of us, it's a lot, and it can literally, you know, short out the board in the head. You know, if there's too much sensory-wise for me, I eventually will go, and I kind of shut off, which is what our kids do sometimes. So we become aware of it, we become cognizant of it, and then we can be compassionate about it, right? And we can figure out how we want to proceed with it. We've had lots of experts on the show talking about systematic desensitization. One of the things that I can think of and that you guys can search on the Ask Dr. Doreen's, we had a parent who asked about having a child at lunchtime in a very echoey old gymnasium, that at lunchtime the noise it bounces, it echoes on those hardwood floors, and it was really hard for the child to be able to have conversations. And Dr. Grandpachet's suggestion was to go in with a tape recorder when it's at its noisiest during a lunchtime that the child would participate, tape record, get a great sample of the noises that happen in the room, and then take it home, take the recording home, and give the child something that's very soothing and relaxing for them to do, and very faintly, almost indiscernibly, put the noise on in the background to the point where you really can't even hear it the first time. And then slowly, very slowly, turn the volume up just a little so it's faint, faint, faint in the background, and then it's a little bit more until you get it to the level that it is in that room over a period of time. And we're talking perhaps months. And I know you think, oh my gosh, I don't have months. The child has to be in this room tomorrow. But the point is, you want it to be effective to the point where the child can handle it, that their body, their brain can process it in a way and put it in the background. And still focus on the thing they're doing. And that takes time. That's an investment in time. But by the way, if we were to take the time to do that with the lunchroom sounds, it will help our child to be able to process when they're in a crowded place. And I would imagine that in the lunchroom on the recording that you would do, every once in a while there would be a particular noise. And if we start very faintly having that noise on over time, the child begins to realize that's just a part of my, hearing. Nothing bad is connected with it. I'm doing something very comfortable, so that they can begin to process it more. I think one of the keys too is being aware of what you do afterwards. So especially while you're working on it, in the meantime, let's say, you've got the noise to whatever environment your child is in on a regular basis playing in the background, but you're still going to places that have loud noises that you can't control and that you haven't desensitized them to. Make sure that what you do afterwards even during, but especially afterwards, give them time to decompress. Don't give heavy demands in the period of time afterwards. And if your child is someone who will melt down in the middle because it's so loud, don't be asking them to do things. If you're saying, okay, I want to work on this because I want it to be better. We're doing the thing at home where we're desensitizing, but in the meantime, I got to go to this big carnival because we have to go to it. Set a reasonable time, a commitment for how long you're going to be there. If your child has enough receptive language, talk to them about it's going to be loud. You can, especially during the winter, you can put earmuffs on. We used to put, we had a hat with flaps that Jem would wear during a movie so that it would just take enough of the sound down that he could handle it. So see if there are things that you can add on in that way, but don't plan on staying really long. Don't put heavy demands on while you're there. You don't want to be there and be correcting the child on eye contact and things like that and prompting them. Just say, we're going to go and we're going to do the best that we can, and this is all we're going to accomplish during this trip. And then when you leave, minimize what you're asking them to do. That's not the time to go and do intensive lessons. Give them some deconstruct time so that they can process and decompress, not deconstruct, decompress. And in that way, we can help our children over the long term to be able to handle those noises and those crowds. We're going to take a break right now, and we're going to go to the A Word. And the A Word is an ongoing documentary following a little boy, Jack Riley. And we just had an outing with Jack Riley where we took my son and the dad from the A Word and Jack Riley and the therapist, Jessica from the A Word, and we took the Autism Live crew and we went to the Los Angeles Zoo and we had a wonderful afternoon. It was like the hottest day in the year. It was so unbelievably hot. It was ridiculously hot. And so that's an environmental factor, right? And I know that at one point, Mike, the dad from the A Word, and I were both talking about the fact that, you had to sort of make it so that it was a little bit easier for the kids. That some of the things that I might have worked on with my son, I made the choice, we're just not going to work on that today because we're working on staying centered in the heat and not having a meltdown in the heat. That's a perfectly good thing to work on and to sort of edit while you're walking and saying, okay, I was going to work on this, this, and this, but you know what? This other thing is happening. This other opportunity has presented itself. So we're going to edit down. And at the end, and we'll have that video for you in a couple of weeks here, but at the end, we were sitting and talking and we both were talking about our strategies for the rest of the day. Mike, the dad from the A Word, about what were our kids going to do? Because by the time we left, I think it was around 4:30, 5 o'clock on a Friday. And the kids had school that day. And as I said, hot. And there was a lot going on, right? And both of us were talking about our kids are going to go home and we're going to let them veg for a while. That, they're going to get to play on their iPads. They're going to take it easy. We're going to feed them. We're going to shower them because it was disgustingly... Everyone was drenched with sweat by the time that we left, plus all the dust that the animals kick up. So we were all a little on the dirty side. And so taking, baths and showers and putting on comfortable jammies, being in air conditioning and getting to play with iPods. That was, on the agenda for that night. So in any case, we had that great time with Jack Riley and he was a treat. But we're going to show you the most recent, the next in the series. It's not the most recent for the A Word. So take a look. This is the A Word.
I know a cute little blue-eyed boy, and his name is Jack. Jack Riley. He got a big, warm, blue-eyed soul that makes your heart beat fast. Exciting. I say Jack, Jack, Jack is my buddy. Jack, Jack, Jack is my buddy. Everybody around is so down with Jack.
I'm Christine, and I've been with CARD for 2 weeks now.
Hi, I'm Jessica. I'm a senior therapist on the case.
I'm training, and I have an overlap with Jack Riley today. This is my third overlap.
For training new therapists, they normally do 20 hours of training at the office or e-learning.
E-learning is video clips, basically preparing you for overlaps, preparing you for how to do programs.
And then they do about 8 to 9 overlaps in the field to get a hands-on feel of the therapy training that they learned and to work with a child one-on-one. So like the first overlap would be them just purely just observing, and then as the overlaps go on, the therapist is given opportunities to actually do the programs, do behavior interventions on their own. So which one did you want to do?
I was going to do this one.
Locations. Okay. Yeah, so it's still a math trial, so do errorless learning for that one.
How long has he been doing fire station?
This would be his 4th time.
Where do you see a fire hose at a fire station?
So ask again.
Fire hoses.
Where do you see a fire hose?
A fire station.
Good job.
After 8 or 9 overlaps, they do a field eval. And that includes the therapist actually running the whole session purely on their own without any help from us. And when they pass, then they get put on schedules and get put to work with other kids. And if they don't pass, then they do more training and then they take the field eval again.
Where do you see a fire truck? Can you look at me, Jack Riley? Where do you see a fire truck?
A fire station.
Good job.
So like from there with the fading of prompts, that was great. So you prompted full,
And then
full
I just
verbal,
knew
partial
that I
verbal,
could
and
back
then
away.
yeah.
Welcome back. That was the A Word. I want to remind you that you can be watching that entire series on their very own YouTube channel, and it's worthwhile. And you can jump in wherever you want if you're wanting to watch because your child is at a particular phase and you want to see how they got through that on the A Word, you can jump in there. Or if you want to see what the scope of an ABA program covers, you're going to see a really good representation of it. All children are different, so no 2 children are going to have exact programs alike. That would be cookie cutter, and that's not what works with autism. But you get a sense of what it's like and how the progress is like. It's a great representation of what it's like having intensive ABA therapy in your home. I've had intensive ABA therapy in my home, and I watch it, and it takes me back, and it's helping me to process all the things that we had happen in our home because I was too stressed at the time, really too stressed to appreciate. But so want to encourage you to watch the series in its entirety. But I want to take a second and talk about one of the main topics of this week's A Word is overlaps and what those are and why they're so important. When my son was diagnosed, and the first time we met a family who said, "Are you getting quality ABA therapy?" And I went, "Nah, I just don't think I'm going to do that because the doctor said not to." And then they, took me in the other room and sat me down and said, "Okay, now look. Here's the thing. Here's our child, and here's what our child was like before. And if you want for your child to make the most amount of progress, this has to be a component of your life." And I went, "Oh, okay." I didn't know. That wasn't what the doctor explained to me, right? And they started talking to me about the fact that my life was going to change significantly, because my child was about to be 3, that I was within a window, and that I should have an expectation that he needed to have between 30 and 40 hours a week of ABA therapy, and that these therapists were going to come into my home that amount of time, and that they were going to work with my child, and that it was going to feel very weird and that it wasn't just going to be for like a month or 2, it was going to be for several years, that we were looking at between 2 and 4 years. We actually ended up doing 5, but who's counting? I was. But in any case, they were saying to me, and not only are these therapists going to come in and they're going to be working with your child, but they're going to train other new therapists, and you're going to have to make peace with that, because these therapists have to get trained, and they have to get trained on real children. And you might think to yourself, that's horrifying, except it's not. The reason why the system is what it is, and if you're working with any ABA provider, you should check with them about what their system is in terms of training new therapists, and you should actively be a part of it. And you should not try to circumvent it. I know parents who say, "Well, I don't want anybody who doesn't know what they're doing to come in and work with my child." Well, I think that that's a good place to start. And I know at the Center for Autism and Related Disorders, all beginning therapists first do CARDI learning, then they have intensive in the classroom training, and then they go out and meet with children. So they're not coming in, off the street with no knowledge whatsoever. But even then, talking about it, doing it in CARD e-learning or doing any kind of e-learning, and then doing in a classroom where, somebody pretends to be the child, all of that is really good, but it's so different when it's individual children, right? So they need to get the practice. And one of the things that they do at the Center for Autism and Related Disorders is that the next step is they come and observe a really good therapist interacting with, several different children at different times, right? So they're observing first, then they come in and they will do things with that therapist where the therapist will be teaching them how to do it. They'll say, here's the next thing that you're going to do, and they'll give them pointers right in the moment. That's an overlap. And then eventually, after they've done 8 or 9 of those, that's when they do their field evaluation, where they come into the home and they act as if they're running the session, and a senior therapist stands there, watches, grades them, and says whether they get to go on, graduate, and start working with children on their own. So it's a very intensive process becoming a therapist. And some people excel at it, and some people, wash out at different places along the way. It's kind of like SEAL training, the Navy SEALs, and they wash out and they go away because it's not for everyone. It really isn't. And other people rise to the occasion and get excited and get passionate and turn into rock star therapists. But here's the thing that I want you to know when you think about, okay, but it takes time for them to be training this person in front of my child and making corrections, and I don't want somebody doing something incorrect. Like you saw how tentative that therapist was as she was starting the program, and she was like looking like, am I doing this right? Here's what's great about that. Here's the fabulous news about training other therapists. You're helping to help your child and help other kids, but you're also creating an environment which you're striving for generalization with your child. We talk about the fact that it's important that not only can your child do this, whatever it is, count to 158, or say, I want more please, or say, that is the color red. Not only is it important for them to do that with me and with my husband and with the therapist who comes the most often, they need to be able to do it with everyone, or it's not really their skill. And in the beginning, when a therapist is doing something, they're going to do it a specific way, and then they have to change it up so that the child doesn't just learn it in one way. There's nothing more effective at changing things up than bringing in a new person who doesn't necessarily know all the rules, because if the child can do it with them, they're getting it, and it really puts the children through their paces. If you think about it, when we send our kids to school and we want to train teachers so that they can be the most effective, but nobody is going to be perfect 100% of the time. And we don't want to create an army of kids who can only react to people who understand how to do ABA, right? So it is an ideal, ingenious part of your child's program that their therapists are going to change, and that there are going to be people who come in who know enough that they're not going to mess your child up, but they may not get it right, and that's all to the good for your child. So don't try to circumvent that. Don't be one of those people who says, no, I only want really experienced people. Make sure you have a mix. Don't let somebody come in and do bad therapy with your child, and don't let somebody, come in and just assume that they know what they're doing. But do let good therapists train people with your child. That in the long run, you will get more good quality therapy, and so will everyone else, and your child will learn more. You're actually getting 2 therapists. The same, you would have had the trained therapist to begin with, but now you have a junior therapist, so you got 2 people. Kids love it. They love meeting new people. They love showing off their new skills to new people. It can really be beneficial. So I encourage you, check with your ABA provider, see how they do it, and then be a really good advocate for that. Because I tell you what, we need an army of these therapists. I don't know that we could ever get to the point where we had too many. And if you're looking for job security, if you think that's a job for you, I encourage you, almost every ABA provider is hiring on a regular basis, and you can make a difference in a lot of lives. All right, so that's our discussion about the A word. We are going to take a break and be back with you in just a minute. Stick with us.
Skills is an online program that provides assessment, curriculum, positive behavior support planning for challenging behavior, and progress tracking, and it does this all in one place. The Skills Assessment and Curriculum addresses 8 areas of development, which even includes advanced higher level areas such as executive functions and cognition, which pretty much makes Skills the only ABA-based set of curricula for teaching more complex skills, things like problem solving, planning, self-management, perspective taking, and even inferring and predicting others' private events. Skills is a 4-step system. Step 1 is to add the child to your account. Step 2 is to start assessment. The Skills Assessment is the only ABA-based assessment with psychometric research demonstrating the language subscale to have excellent reliability. Every area of human functioning and typical child development from infancy to adolescence was researched, making the Skills Assessment the most comprehensive of its kind in the world, and we're quite proud of that.
Skills is easy to use. Simply click Start Assessment and begin answering questions. Or simply type in a keyword, find specific activities to assess, and add activities to treatment. Step 3. Choose activities. Once you've completed the assessment, Skills selects from a pool of 4,000 activities categorized by age, level, and skill type to provide you with exactly those activities each child needs. Start by choosing a curriculum, then a lesson, and finally an activity. Click the information icon to view prerequisites, ages in which targets develop, examples, and IEP goals. Click the video icon to watch a short video. Once you've identified an activity you want to teach, adding activities to treatment is a snap. Step 4. Start treatment. Here you can access customizable activity lesson details, add your own customized targets and exemplars, and edit an activity status such as introducing or mastering it. You can even print handouts such as worksheets, tracking forms, visual aids, and other materials. Skills also offers multiple progress charts mapping curriculum progress, lesson progress, and cumulative number of activities and targets mastered over time. The Skills language curriculum is categorized by verbal behavior type so that users can identify progress for verbal operants, such as echoics, mans, tax, and interverbals.
Skills is one of the only programs that provides the ability to write behavior intervention plans, or BIPs, for challenging behavior.
With just a few clicks, the outline of the behavior intervention plan is written for you and ready to be printed and implemented.
You can learn more about Skills today and get started by visiting us at www.skillsforautism.com, or you can call us at 877-975-4559. Skills. Progress starts here.
Welcome back to Autism Live. Joining us in the studio right now is a spectacular guest. She is Bryce Miler. She is the head of contracts here at the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. A wonderful woman, an autism mom, has a son who's recovered from autism, and she happens to be a great authority on insurance, and especially in the field of insurance having to do with autism. So we welcome you to the show.
Thank you.
So
it's always nice to be here with you.
So you've got a couple of things that are coming up, a couple of seminars that are coming up, and we want to know, first of all, what do New York autism parents need to know about insurance coverage for autism services?
Okay. There's 4 important things, and if you keep yourself focused on these 4 things, you'll have a pretty good handle on what's going to happen with your coverage. The first question is do you have coverage for ABA therapy? The law doesn't apply to all plans. Not all plans have to cover it, so you want to find out, do you have coverage at all?
Okay.
Then the second thing you want to know is the provider, the ABA provider you're using, are they in network with your insurance carrier?
Okay.
Do they bill and accept Cigna or UBH or what have you?
Okay.
Then the next question is does your plan require pre-authorization? Meaning, do you have to get approval for the services before they get done in order to get paid?
Okay.
Okay. And then the last one, the last item is what does your plan cover?
Okay.
Is there a dollar maximum? The New York mandate has a $45,000 limit that they can apply. Not all plans do have that cap, but some plans have the $45,000 a calendar year or year limit. And other than that, what are your copays? Do you have a huge deductible? Do you have to pay 20% of all services? Do you have an out-of-pocket maximum? An out-of-pocket maximum is where your copays go away and they pay 100% for the rest of the year.
Okay.
That's all that is really important.
So those are a lot of things to know. And if there's a parent sitting at home and has no idea, is there a place that they can go, one-stop shop, or where do you recommend they go to find the answers to those questions?
Okay, so if they have an employer-sponsored plan through their work, they would want to go to the Human Resources Department. Each employer, when they're giving you insurance as part of your compensation, they have to tell you what you're buying,
okay,
what it's going to cover. If you had a small company and the HR person doesn't really know their chops with insurance or whatever, they usually have a broker or somebody that they can go to, and you want to specifically say, I need to know, and not just is autism covered. I hear this every day. Oh, they said autism was covered. Well, most speech, OT, neurologist visits, what have you for autism are usually covered on any plan.
Okay.
But is ABA, is Applied Behavioral Analysis Treatment for Autism, covered under your plan? And the ABA coverage is the type of therapy that has been controversial and hasn't been covered. Now there's 34 states that cover it.
Okay.
New York is one of them, but you can see there's still other places where it's not a mandate.
And you're going to be doing these two different events in New York coming up. And if people want more information about those, they can go to centerforautism.com. You can click on the events tab. It'll take you to the calendar, and you will see that they are coming up. The first one is on the 26th of September.
Yeah, that's a Thursday evening.
And then the 28th of September, you're doing another one.
In New York on Saturday.
Okay,
right.
so there's the two events. One of them is in Fairport. The other one is in Glendale, New York. Okay. We're going to take a really short break, and then we're going to come back, and Bryce is going to tell us a little bit more about those 4 things you need to know and how you're going to sort those things out, because it's going to make the difference of whether you get your ABA coverage covered or not. Big dollar amount difference, so stick with us.
Right.
The Institute for Behavioral Training provides courses in applied behavior analysis for the treatment of autism. Access IBT e-learning videos on the move and learn at your own pace.
I'm going to talk a little bit about intensity.
IBT e-learning makes any location your classroom on the go.
So our objectives for today are to really learn what is autism and how is it diagnosed.
Get professional guidance with IBT face-to-face training. IBT face-to-face training courses prepare you to effectively implement ABA-based interventions. Choose between small group and one-to-one instruction. Earn BCBA supervision hours via one-to-one video conferencing.
So I had a chance to review your BIP today. You know what? It looked really good. You did a good job with it.
IBT continuing education courses. Earn credit through webinars, conferences, article reviews, and e-learning videos. You can learn more at ibehavioraltraining.com. IBT, 360 degrees of ABA training.
Welcome back to Autism Live. In the studio with us live right now is Bryce Miler. She is the head of contracts for the Center for Autism and Related Disorders, and she's also an autism mom and has a son who recovered from autism. I refer to you a lot on the show and talk about how when people call here and they're talking to the contracts department, that there's nobody better on this earth to fight for what a family can get from their insurance provider, because you get it in a way that nobody else does. So we thank you for being here. I know that in the last segment you talked about the fact that there have been some changes that have occurred that have drastically affected families' abilities to access that insurance funding that we keep hearing about. And in particular, I know that there have been some changes in New York. Give us an example of what's been happening and how that affects a family.
Well, it's really complicated, but I'm going to explain what happened in the last 12 months in the state of New York.
All right.
What happened is they passed their autism mandate, like all the other 34 states did.
And we said, woohoo!
Woohoo, it's passed, and it's one of the states that passed. Well, it wasn't mandated that it start covering anything until 11/1/2012. So last November is when the mandate went into effect. Not everybody would even have it on November 1st, 2012, because your employer plan, wasn't required to cover it until the next renewal on or after 11/1/2012. It was written that way.
Okay.
So, you know, most people, I'd say 65-70% of people that work for a big company, their plans renew 1/1.
Yeah.
They do their open enrollment in November, December, whatever, and then their plan changes on 1/1. If they change to an HMO, it would change effective 1/1. So a lot of people were going to get the coverage 1/1 or even 11/1 or 12/1. Well, what happened was, at the last minute, everything was fine, everything was getting ready to be settled, and we have 2 offices there, so I have to make sure all my parents, if a parent's paying out of pocket and all of a sudden they have insurance, I need to get them approved, get ourselves approved as an in-network provider with the carriers.
Right.
Which, if you think about it, being in-network with the carriers in that state, Empire, Blue Cross Blue Shield of California, Excellus, they didn't have a network. Why would they have a network for something that wasn't covered?
Right.
They wouldn't contract with ABA providers because they never covered it before.
Right.
Right?
It's a brand new thing. You got to invent the wheel.
Yeah, so, you know, we've done this in all the other states where the laws passed, and we had to say, let us in now.
Right.
And they'll say, what are you?
Right, exactly.
You know, it's new to them too. So anyway, in New York, we're going to have to become in-network. We're going to have to check all the benefits for our families, especially if they're paying out of pocket, because, you know, you have to make sure to take care of that. So we're getting all geared up to go, and a few days after November 1st, we find out that there was an emergency regulation passed by the finance department, or the entity that would pass such a regulation on ABA therapy, stating that it was borderline illegal. It was not allowed to provide AB or bill for ABA therapy with an insurance company unless you had a BCBA as the supervisor, a board certified behavior analyst, which is the gold standard of these people that treat the kids, a BCBA and a license. So you had to have both.
And nobody, and just to be clear, for people who don't have a reference point, nobody else was asking for that. You had to have a
state. No other state.
Yeah, so you had, people were asking, in some states they say that you have to have the BCBA, but they don't say a BCBA and a license.
And the trick here was they never issued a license for applied behavior or behavior analyst. They never issued such a license. And this is, you know, kind of complicated. Other states that actually issue a license, fine.
Yeah.
If I'm a board certified behavior analyst and they want me to take some test to prove that I know ABA, licenses have their value.
Right.
Right? But New York had no license for such activity. They didn't issue a license, but they wanted you to have the BCBA and the license. So what that meant was you had to be a BCBA and have some other kind of a license on top of it, like a licensed clinical psychologist or an MFT, marriage family therapist, a licensed clinical social worker, something like that in addition to it. So the result was this law was passed, and the mandate to cover the ABA, it never said anything about a license. Never did. It never did. So coming up on November 1st, we're thinking, okay, people are going to have it. They're going to have it. Our BCBAs are fine. Our setup is fine. Our setup complies with all the laws. Well, on October 31st, they snuck in this emergency regulation that said you had to have both. And it squelched the whole thing. Because there are, I don't remember how many there were, but it's a tiny little number of BCBAs in New York that actually had both.
Yeah.
So what it resulted in was nobody was getting covered.
Right.
So what happened was I actually went to New York to the same 2 places to talk about the big change, and I was scheduled to go before the emergency regulation hit the ground, and the shockwaves everywhere, like, what is this going to mean? Nobody could figure out what to do. It was just total chaos.
Yeah.
So I'm going there on November 28th or something to talk about it, and I realized that I have different things to talk about now.
Yeah.
I have to talk about what is going on.
Right.
So sometimes I say certain things, I usually am right. So I sit up there and I said, well, folks, you know, I know that this is a problem. It is getting in the way of your coverage, but they're going to have to fix this because it doesn't match. I knew they would have to retract it.
Right.
It wasn't going to work. It wasn't going to stand. Legally,
it wasn't practical.
Well, legally it couldn't stand.
Yeah.
Unless they developed this license that they said you had to have for ABA therapy. That's fine. We'll get it.
Right.
You know,
that
whatever.
That would have been surmountable.
That would have. Yeah, but
it didn't exist.
The bureaucracy in New York trying to get a license bureau up and going. I'm sure it's going to take another couple years. So anyway, I'm telling the poor families there, I'm saying, well, I know that this is a huge setback, but I do think that by February 1st, this is going to be resolved. And I just, in my mind, I thought it would be February 1st. It was July 25th.
There we go.
So July 25th, they repealed the emergency regulation that required the license. So it's over. It's over, and people should have coverage now. Is there?
And that's the wonderful thing. Of course, I'd like to know that somebody got slapped on the wrist for ever putting the last minute regulation in that didn't make sense. But moving forward, there are a bunch of families now that thought they were going to get coverage last year that now are going to get coverage.
Yeah. So the good news is as of July 25th, 2013, they reversed the emergency regulations, passed a new emergency a new overriding regulation that said that it was permissible to just have your BCBA and run an ABA program. So on July 25th, we decided, okay, we've got to become in network because everybody was putting their networks on hold.
Yeah.
They weren't authorizing services. We were calling for people that had different carriers, and they said, yes, they've got the coverage. But until this mess is resolved, we're not going to approve anything.
Right. Okay, so everybody's moving forward, but here's my problem in terms of you and I both know as autism parents how overwhelming it is when your child is diagnosed and you have to get up to speed on a bunch of different things. And now add to that parents need to understand insurance and to be able to negotiate this. So what advice do you give parents who are looking at this now because they thought they were going to get it, they didn't get it, they're a little bit frustrated now. I think there's probably some fear out there of, yeah, we got told once before this was going to work out.
They should be hugely frustrated. Look what happened before. I can't believe that the insureds in New York can trust anything, but it has been resolved. A lot of the carriers that I've talked to, there's still a couple that say that their legal team is still working since July 25th.
Yeah.
Their legal team is still working to make sure that the regulation does allow them to go with just the BCBA, but they're all coming around. In the beginning, I started calling all the carriers on 725, and I said, "You ready to go? You're going to give me authorizations now? You're going to start covering this now?"
Right.
And almost all of them said, "Well, our legal department is looking at that."
Right. Let's hurry up and wait. Meanwhile,
and so, a couple of them took 3 weeks to decide, but then they all said, okay, it says what it says.
Right.
We're reading it correctly, that it's perfectly fine the way the law was written in the first place, the mandate for the BCBA.
So open up your pocketbooks.
So, so I think that the parents, when they're dealing with insurance, they need to talk to their employer, the HR department, find out exactly what they have. We're coming up on open enrollment season.
Yeah.
So they really need to find somebody they trust or some way to verify which plans they're given a choice of.
Yeah.
At open enrollment, they might give you an HMO, a PPO, a point of service, an EPO, whatever kind of plan. You have to make sure that the plan you're taking is going to cover it. So a lot of PPO plans, they can be self-funded.
Yeah.
And when they're self-funded, they're technically not insurance.
Yeah.
The employer pays all the claims, so they're not buying insurance. And when it's not insurance, they don't have to follow state insurance mandates.
Yeah.
They're regulated by the federal government and ERISA laws. So if you have a PPO plan and you think it's covered, it may not be. So you have to get somebody you trust in HR to give you a list. It's always good to see it in writing, to be able to see somewhere on the benefit summary or the book or whatever they give you that it actually spells out applied behavioral analysis for the treatment of autism and what's going to be paid for that, and if there's a maximum. The one thing you need to cue in on is most HMO plans, 99.99% of them are never self-funded. HMO plans, it's almost impossible to self-fund one of those, so they're pretty much always regulated by the state. And because of that, almost all HMO plans always have to comply with the state mandates. Like the New York mandate, the 45,000, the HMO plans should have to comply with that. So keep that in mind.
So when you're asking these questions, that's a guideline. And we've been recommending on the show, and tell me if I'm wrong, that we've been recommending people to go to the ABA provider that they've been wanting to use and ask them to help them figure out what their insurance will cover too.
Right.
Is that something that we should continue saying, or better for them to go to the employer?
No, both. If your provider has the ability to deal with the insurance, you're going to have to talk to your provider to see if they're in network.
Yeah.
Because of the cost of ABA, sometimes if your provider isn't contracting with the carrier and you get the in-network benefits,
yeah,
it's hugely expensive. You'd have to pay 50%. So you want to find a provider that's contracting with your carrier, and then they bill for you. If the provider isn't contracting, a lot of times they won't bill for you because the carrier won't pay them.
Yeah.
They're not legally allowed to issue them a check.
You end up having to take care of that.
So you pay up front, and then you have to fight it out for the next 9 months. And there are still paying for these claims is a brand new thing for the carriers. So, I mean, we fight every month to get them to pay what they're supposed to pay, and every month or every few months they get better because they've figured out how to do it.
Yeah, but there are ways to negotiate this, and I think the takeaway for all of us is that there are a bunch of families that now are eligible for coverage where they weren't before. And if you have questions about that and you're in the state of New York, Bryce has these 2 events coming up where she's going to be speaking. I want to encourage you to go to centerforautism.com, go to the events tab at the top of the page. It'll give you a calendar. You can see on the calendar and click on, it's interactive, which I love. There is the event on 9/26. That's the one in Fairport, and then the one on the 28th is for Glendale, New York. And so you can click on those. And the one in Glendale, there's a lot of speakers that are going to be there.
Yes.
It's an actual conference, and the one in...
An attorney is going to give a lot of great advice.
Yeah, you'll want to check that out to see, because there's a lot of things you can do there. But the one on the evening of, it's the Thursday evening, it's just you speaking about insurance and how families can slog through this. Bryce will be there. You'll have a question and answer period, I'm sure, so that they can talk about what's happening.
Exactly.
So encourage you to do that, and check that out at centerforautism.com. We're going to take a short break, and then we're going to come back, because I can't have Bryce in the studio and not talk a little bit about her story and have you guys get to know her a little bit more. So stick with us.
Hi, I'm Bryce Miler, and I'm the Contracts Director for the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. I've been here for about 5 years. CARD has several employees with many years of insurance experience, dealing with insurance, dealing with pre-authorizations, dealing with discovering whether there's coverage or not. So we have more experience than any ABA provider that I've ever come across. So for a prospective client, somebody that may be interested in, ABA therapy and what CARD has to offer, we have a special 800 number, and you call that number. They will talk to you about what we have to offer, how ABA works. He'll ask you for the front and back of your ID card, and then we check to see if you do or do not have coverage. If you have coverage for ABA therapy, we try to do whatever we can to set it up where we can bill for you and you don't have to fight with the insurance company every month to get your claims paid. For California residents, we recently did a series of insurance trainings all over the state, and you can click on the link below to watch pretty much the full presentation. It has a lot of information, how you can get your insurance company to comply with what they're supposed to do, understanding the networks, and many other valuable pieces of information.
Welcome back to Autism Live. Joining us in the studio, one of my favorite people on earth, and I mean that sincerely. Bryce Miler is with us, and she is the head of contracts here at the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. When families are trying to get insurance coverage for their ABA, Bryce is in charge of that large and growing department that takes care of that and slogs through all that insurance stuff that most of us don't know, but Bryce has such an understanding of it. And I mentioned before that Bryce is uniquely qualified in this area because her son was diagnosed with autism and covered. So when I have questions in life about what happens next on my journey through autism, I frequently run by her office, and she's a very busy person, and I'll eke 5 seconds of time with her to say, Bryce, I don't know what I'm
doing. It takes
doing.
me back when you ask certain questions. Like, I haven't thought about that in years. When they get older.
Well, I want to be when I grow up.
When they get a bit older, there's still things that happen. Even after they're technically recovered, there's still things that happen that...
Well, it's life.
Like, oh my gosh. Well, you know, any child, any teenager is going to have their little piccadillies that, like, why are they doing that?
Yes, absolutely. And we should say that Bryce's story is one of the 4 featured stories in the documentary Recovered. You can see her child when he was very young. But for the viewers who haven't seen that, tell us how old was your son when he was diagnosed, and what were you told when he was first diagnosed would be his outcome by the initial doctor diagnosing?
Yeah, he was 2 years and 10 months when he was diagnosed. He hadn't been talking, hadn't been doing anything, and you know the pediatrician just kept saying he was a boy, and then she just continued to not do things. Didn't start clapping, he was fine, just sat there, didn't really do anything, didn't copy or mimic or anything like that. So we ended up, a couple of people thought he was deaf, so we take him to UCLA to get the auditory test, and they put him under the chloral hydrate before we took him to UCLA, and it did the backwards effect on him 3 times. So they put him under anesthesia to do the test, and we were at UCLA, and they came out and they said his hearing is perfect. And when they said that, I knew.
Did you?
Because we had hooked up with the Child Development Center in the town where I live, and you know, they were doing sensory integration stuff, you know, in the group setting with all the little kids, you know, and one of the OTs said, you know, I think he might be autistic, and I had no idea what that was. This is 20 years ago.
Yeah, I was going to say, what year would this have been?
It's 20 years ago, exactly. So 83? No,
93. I know, I get confused when we start talking in big numbers of years. So 93.
I remember 83.
Well, but that's
a long time ago.
A long time ago in autism years.
Oh, it's a long time ago.
Yes.
There was just a couple books that they had.
Yeah.
Just a couple.
You truly are a pioneer.
Well, it's been forever, but I mean, this OT said that, and I grabbed one of the books that they had, one of the 2 books they had, and it said that 98% would always be disabled. They would always be disabled. There was no cure, and it was horrible.
Yeah.
So I was devastated when she said that. But
and when you started asking questions about what can I do for him, what did they say to you was going to be his future?
Okay, so I went to UCLA. We went to the regional center in California. The regional centers are great. The doctor was great, but we wanted our own opinion, so we make an appointment at UCLA. We heard about the Neuropsychiatric Institute, and we go, and the famous B.J. Freeman, you know, who is still there, I believe. She diagnosed him as autistic, and she said, I could tell within 10 seconds the way he walked across the room. And I'm like, wow, she's a genius, you know, she's amazing. And I had taken a psychology class in college that showed the Lovaas film, and I remembered it. And so I said, well, what about this? They used to call it behavior modification. Okay. That's how old it is. So what about this behavior modification? I saw this film with Lovaas, and he had 3 kids. And there was 3 kids, and one of them, they showed him from when he was little and severely affected. And then they showed him the 3 kids when they're playing pool, and you can't tell which one it is.
I've seen that film, and I love it.
I love it,
it's
too.
Amazing.
You can't tell which one it is, you know? So I said, what about that? And she said, oh, that's the devil's handiwork. It doesn't work. It's like dog training. It's cruel. It's evil. You know, and of course...
So she's the one spreading that rumor.
All those years ago.
Wow.
All those years ago, and, you know, I thought, we walked out of there, we thought, oh my goodness, and I had taped it because me and my husband were going to all these appointments, and we would come home and we would disagree on what they said.
Oh, there you go.
We were both there.
Great advice.
We're both there, and I said, she said this. She didn't say that was, you know, whatever. So we taped it, and we walked out of there thinking, oh, she's a genius. And then about the next day, because she said he was going to be in a home by the time he was 10 because he was so big, and he was going to be violent because he couldn't talk. And she said he probably wouldn't talk, and all we were supposed to do was go home and just be happy together as a married couple, whatever. So the next day, I'm like, that's crazy. What is she talking about? This is nuts. I'm going to do something. So what every parent should do if they're newly diagnosed, if you have it around you, parents group. Sign up for a parents group, go to the parents group. I learned so much from those parents.
Yeah.
And one of the things, you know, because I was walking around thinking, oh, this ABA thing, it's not right, it doesn't work, or, you know, whatever. So I go to a parents group, and Doreen Grandpachet is speaking at it and I had just been diagnosed a month. So we're sitting in these people's living room, and Doreen is telling me, about ABS. She was completely respectful, saying, well, it works for a lot of kids, and we think it's we think it'll help, if it's appropriate for your child, we think it'll help them, and this is what it is, right? So I questioned her.
Yeah.
I actually stood in front of her and said, what about, UCLA saying that, this isn't, proven or whatever it was. And she said, well, they have their opinion, but it is proven, and, they're incorrect and all that kind of thing. And so, I didn't know her from anybody. But later on in the house, I talked to the parents.
Yeah.
And there were 2 parents that had been doing it. And they showed me pictures of their child before they started, and they've been doing it for about 9 months or so. And then a picture after, you could see that the kid was there on the other pictures. And these parents were like, it's everything.
Yeah.
It's not. It's kind. It's not invasive. If you the way they do it, it's not in any way what you've heard. It's ridiculous, right. Bryce. It's ridiculous. Right. And look at it, and it's working.
Right.
So I said, okay, I'll do it. And that was because parents, you can, if they're doing something that's working, you should, consider if that might work for your child.
Yeah, absolutely.
But anyway, so So 4 years and 2 months later, 4 years and 10 months later, they said he was recovered.
Yeah.
Doreen and the card had worked with him for almost 5 years, and they said, you know what, he knows everything a normal kid should know. That's basically recovered, and he should be fine. He has all the skills anybody else. He couldn't test as autistic.
Right.
So I said, at this point I was furious with UCLA, saying that they almost had me give up on my child.
Yes.
And not do ABA.
Right.
And what I found out happened was a lot of families and parents that were going to her at the same time as me, they listened to her.
To that BJ Freeman.
They listened to her, and they didn't do ABA therapy.
Sure.
And the kids didn't. The kids are the same as they were.
Yeah. Probably to this day.
Oh yeah. Oh, yeah. I know one of them that is.
Yeah.
Seriously. So.
And it's like looking. I know we had a similar. It's like looking at the mirror and the crystal ball and seeing this is what we did and this is where we could have been, and thanking your lucky stars.
Oh my! Thank for whatever reason, I went to that parents group meeting and was involved in that and saw.
Yeah.
I saw it. The other people weren't lucky enough to show up at the meeting I was, and they didn't see it.
Yeah.
I only did it because I saw it.
Yeah.
I
do know. I do know. I think a lot of us know. And so now, tell us what he's like now.
He's just your normal 22-year-old kid. He's almost done with college. He's at CSUN.
It's amazing.
He's at CSUN, and he works, and...
We have a video that we show of him from time to time, but we usually only show it on Fridays because I get messy crying. It was him speaking at the 25th anniversary gala.
Oh, that's my favorite.
And I don't know if Emily has it, but we could show it today, but I am reduced to the ugly cry whenever
it makes me cry too.
I'm sure. He's not my child and I cry. I was at the event, and people can watch it. It's on Card's YouTube page. But I always say, what was he, 17 or 18 at the time?
He was 18.
Right around then. And imagine most 18-year-olds getting up and speaking in front of a room full of, 400 people in tuxedos in one of the hugest, most impressive, most intimidating halls in all of Los Angeles, and making them laugh and cry and being incredibly articulate. And this is a child that one time people said, just institutionalize him because that's the end of the road for him.
There's no way to teach him. There's no way to teach him how to be normal. There wasn't a way. That's what she was saying. It can't be done.
Right.
Don't waste your money. It can't be done.
Yeah.
And I thought, I'll try everything. I told myself I'll give it 5 years. I'll do everything I can, and then we'll see.
Right. But I remember watching your son speak,
and to this day,
no, we have a box of tissues just for that event. But it was so inspirational to me. We had already been on our journey for several years with ABA therapy, but it just goosed me in the butt too, and reminded me, why we do what we do, and why it's so important to me personally to let other parents know. And I know you fight hard for them to get the coverage so that they can do the funding. I mean, everybody has their place in this, but your son and him speaking, it's something to be shared with the world, because it is so inspirational to look at that. And then go back and watch the recovered video and see video of him when he was a child. wanting so desperately to be able to do what they were asking him to do, but having difficulty that he just couldn't. It's amazing. It's your story is amazing.
Oh my gosh. And I want to thank you for everything you give to the new parents. I mean, if anybody can watch this, I sit outside sometimes and watch you.
So
like
sweet.
It's so clear, it's so easy to understand the way you explain it, because ABA, you know, if you have to explain it correctly for a layperson. A parent like me, you know, I get confused some of the things that are even happening now. But when you explain it, it reminds me. I went through it for 5 years, but some of the terms I forget.
Yes.
And the way you explain it to the parents, it's a lot easier to
thanks. Like
remember.
I said, we all have our place in this, but I also tell the story of you coming home from work and sitting outside his door with your head pressed against the door to listen to the therapy to learn the techniques. When there's a will, there's a way, and as we know, there's so many parents out there that you're saying, I want to be able to help my child, and I applaud you for all that you do for all of our families, and remind everybody Bryce is hard at work for you. Probably working too hard. We will say that. Bryce is putting in really long hours.
We're gonna get all of our New York people covered and set up.
Yes. Well, and I said to somebody the other
all
day,
of our people.
Somebody was saying, I said, this is personal to me, and I know it's the same thing to you, that it's this personal.
Yeah,
it's not
it
just
is.
a job, it's personal.
It's nice to have a job that you can really care about. I used to work at an insurance company, and I cared about doing a good job there, but it's different.
It is. It's different. It's personal.
Yeah.
But we thank you for being a part of our community, and we only bring Bryce on occasionally to talk about big things because she is so busy and getting those funding dollars for people. So this is a rare treat. But thank you so much. We're going to take a break, and we're going to come back with more of the show. So stick with us.
When you find out you're having a boy, you always think like, oh, he's going to play football, he's going to do this and that. And then when he's diagnosed, all those things get washed away.
It's like that piece that's always in the back of your mind, you know, where is he, what is he doing, is he safe?
We really didn't know what we were dealing with. I wish that they could have directed me a little bit more and provided me some information.
I was a young mom. I didn't know what it was like to raise a boy, despite a boy with autism.
Hundreds of thousands of families are not getting the help they need for their children with autism all around the country. ACT Today is determined to bridge the gap. These families really have to go through a lot to get a grant. The application process isn't easy. The records, the diagnosis proof, they're really battling for their kids. So when we can give them a grant, it is so wonderful to see that they succeed in getting that help for their children. Our founder, Dr. Doreen Graham-Pichet, is an amazing woman, and she is one of the world's foremost authority on behavior of children with autism. She's extremely knowledgeable, and she oversees every single grant we give. She is part of that process. People may think of autism care and treatment as simply schooling or therapy, but we provide important safety supports, things like fencing, for example. The whole family's living in fear of that child running out into traffic. I recently delivered an iPad to a little boy with some of the apps that are out there for children with autism. Miracles happen.
I got the iPad from ACT.
From ACT,
What did it say? Can you repeat that, Dustin?
I got the iPad from ACT.
We have helped so many military families, and when I think of these brave families that are fighting two battles, one to protect our country and one for the right treatment and care for their children, it breaks my heart, and I think we have to do more as a nation to help them.
There's not a day that doesn't go by that we don't think about it. Some people say, oh, he's normal. You don't see the battles that I see every single day. My husband does have to deploy, and when they get on that bus, that might be the last time that my kids ever see them.
So I called, and they informed me that he had received the grant, which was like a blessing from above. I was just like speechless. I just started to cry because, without it, we would have been lost.
The ACT grant was a total miracle, and without that, they wouldn't be able to receive the service dog. So we're so appreciative what they've done for us as a family.
Recently, Act Today funded a program for military children with autism in San Diego, the Inclusion Films program, which is run by Joey Travolta, and teaches kids on the autism spectrum literal filmmaking skills. They learn how to make a movie.
Are we ready? There you go, got it. Okay. Everything that goes into the process of making a film goes into everyday life. So they're learning life skills, they're learning to collaborate.
It was really nice to know how much they were enjoying this camp, and they're with people who are supporting them and are making them feel great about themselves and their differences and their similarities. And I get 2 kids that are working together and apart and together and apart, so it's an interrelationship as well as a camp and a learning experience.
It's so fulfilling when I get letters. One stands out for me, a boy who was 14 with Asperger's, and we gave him a grant to go to a drama camp. He wrote to us and said, "Dear Act Today, thank you for letting me belong for the first time in my life." These kids are remarkable. You know, we underestimate them. They're so knowledgeable, they're so capable, and we can change the life of a family, which means changing the life of a community.
Welcome back to Autism Live. You guys have been writing in a bunch of questions, and I wanted to cover a couple of them before we get to the end of the show. So the question is, my 3-year-old son started school, and we do the GFCF diet, but not 100%. We do give him some gluten stuff. His doctor said they found some Candida on his fecal test that he had done. I told his teacher to just go ahead and give him school lunch like the rest of the kids so he won't feel left out. We're going to start on enzymes soon. Should I stop letting him have school lunch? Okay. And of course, yeah, I'm going to start out by saying that I'm not a nutritionist, nor am I an expert on pretty much anything. Say that across the board. But as a parent, you know, I always say parent to parent, let's talk about a couple of different things here. So your child is 3, which is an ideal time for you to be doing interventions because, and I don't mean just ABA, although I do mean ABA, but it's an ideal time to be, if you're really going to try to do something diet-wise and make an impact, being able to do it at age 3 when you still have a certain amount of control over things is going to be vastly easier than trying to start it with a 5-year-old or a 6-year-old. Here's the thing about if you're going to try GFCF. We recommend as a whole that you don't cold turkey a child into GFCF because that's really difficult. You know what I mean by that? But you don't immediately rip out all the gluten and all of the milk out of their diet because it can cause tantrums, something that we're talking about today. But that you do it in a slow and systematic way. And by the way, we encourage you to take other things out of the diet first before you take the gluten and the casein free out. Like most people will say to you, clean up the diet first, get all the artificial colors and flavors out of the diet first, and then get artificial, pesticides. Definitely you want to minimize those in the diet. And then when you try to take out gluten maybe first, some people try casein first, that you take it out slowly over the course of days, so minimize it and take one out and then take the other one off over a course of maybe a week. That you'll have a better result if you've already taken them off of the artificial colors and flavors a lot of time and the pesticides. It'll be easier to do the GFCF if you get those things taken care of. But when you're doing GFCF, and a lot of people do, by the way, GFCF SF, which is also soy-free, you really have to be strict about it. It's not going to do you a huge benefit. You're not going to get to see whether your child is one of the children that can benefit from a GFCF SF diet unless you are absolutely strict about it. Now, having said that, I don't know what your goals are, what you're trying to achieve. When you know, for a lot of people, not all people, we saw a big change in behavior and a big bump in ability to learn things at a rapid rate when we took the gluten and the casein out. But a lot of people report that if there is an infraction, that a child is given gluten or they're given milk, for some kids, maybe, especially for milk, I think the reaction tends not to last as long, maybe a day, 2 days, that the child isn't able to perform as they could if they didn't have the milk. For gluten, sometimes it can be weeks or even months that an infraction takes to get out of the system. That for the kids that it affects, it can create a fog-like state where they are just not sharp, they're just not going to learn things, they're just not going to get it. Think of, you know, if you were to drug your child, put them on cold medicine, how they are and the stupor that they're in, and imagine trying to have them learn how to speak in that stupor constantly. If you're wanting to see if your kid is one of those kids and you're wanting to do the GFCF, you're going to have to buckle down and do it strict. I know that's not the answer you want to hear, but I'm just parent to parent keeping it real here. And by the way, if you're going to do the GFCF and commit to it, and you've, you know, slowly made it possible for your child to, you know, not cold turkey, but they're eventually pure GFCF, you really want to commit to that. And I think conservatively at least 3 months. I think that most doctors recommend that if you are going to try it, that you do it for at least 6 months. There are a lot of biomedical doctors who won't even take an appointment with your child to work with your child until they have been 6 months clean on a GFCF diet. Not all of them, but a lot of them. A lot of the ones that people really want to get an appointment to see because they've been able to have great things happen with kids. We'll say that 6 months, then you can have an appointment. Now, it sounds like you're working with a doctor who did an oat test because they found candida in the fecal. So your doctor may already have said, you know, this isn't as important to me. But what I will say is that dietary wise, if you're trying to combat yeast, you're going to want to do more than just GFCF. There are some people who are just on a yeast reduction protocol that don't even do GFCF. I think, you know, the two combined can be very effective with a lot of our kids. Certainly not all. When we talk about things dietary and biomedical, we're really talking about case by case, right? But my concern is that what you've written here is, I told his teacher to just go ahead and give him school lunch like the rest of the kids so he won't feel left out. Now, he's 3, and I'm presuming that he has a diagnosis for autism. So you have to, at this point, and I can't make this judgment for you, you have to weigh and say, my 3-year-old will feel left out, or there's a possibility that my 3-year-old will be healthier and be more able to learn. I can't guarantee that to you, of course, because not all kids react the same way. But if your doctor is finding yeast in the stool, I think it's reasonable to think that your child is having to overcome some things to learn the same amount as the other kids at a rate the same amount of other kids. He or she has an extra obstacle that the other kids aren't having to deal with. That's medical. So what I would suggest to you is to weigh how important is it to your child that they feel like they fit in at lunchtime, and is there something you can do to make it look like they're fitting in without it being the same things that everybody else is having. That was the route that we took. In the beginning, my child was severe enough that it made it easy for me. I'll just be honest with you. And I remember it was hard for my mom. We'd be someplace and my mother would say, are you ever going to let that baby have ice cream? Are you ever going to let that baby just have, you know, a burger on a regular bun? Is that day ever going to come? And I would say to her, Mom, he can have it right now. He won't be able to talk for 2 days. That's the trade-off. Is it so important to you that he have a scoop of ice cream, but he won't be able to talk for 2 days? Because that was the situation with my child. And that was when my mother went, okay, now I get the equation now. If these are the two things we're weighing, then the ice cream is not as important. It just isn't. If a child is that affected. I don't know that for your child, and I don't know which is more important for you. But I would ask you to look at that and say, what am I trying to achieve? There is going to come a day when having your child fit in is going to be the most important thing on the list. It might be now, but if your child isn't talking or your child is behind in skills, it may not be the most important thing right now. And if it isn't, then I would say no, stop doing the school lunch. You can buy Ian's makes chicken nuggets that are gluten-free, that are casein-free, look like the regular nuggets, and you can send those to school. They're more expensive than if you make them at home, and if you have the time, you can make them at home. We have a great recipe for them. But I'm saying, you know, there are ways that you can make it look like the same thing and not have an infraction if it's important to you to try the gluten-free, casein-free diet. I see that we are out of time, and I wanted to talk a little bit about time out because somebody had written in and said, I'm so glad we're talking about this week, about a child acting out, because I want to learn about acting out using a timeout versus not using a timeout. So I'm going to talk about this for a couple of minutes, but we're going to have some of our experts weigh in on this throughout the week. But as I'm talking about this, at some point, Emily will start to show you some of the ways you can be in contact with us here on the show. So here's the thing with timeouts, and I know a lot of people like to use timeouts, and if you're using a timeout and it's effective and you're not having problems with tantrums and meltdowns, then you really don't need me, and you probably wouldn't be asking this question. But a lot of people find that timeouts aren't as effective as they are when you see them on television, and you might be asking yourself, why is that? And what our experts tell us is that timeout can be effective when done properly in the right circumstances, and that almost never are they done properly in the right circumstances. So you're giving yourself a problem to start with because it's a very difficult thing to do properly. What usually our experts recommend is that let's try a bunch of positive strategies to get a child to do what we want them to do before we go to the timeout. But if we get to the point where we need a timeout, then you have to really get educated about how to do a timeout properly and when to do a timeout properly. And here's a quick example, because a lot of times our kids will behave in a certain way because they want to get out of doing something. You put a demand on a child and the child doesn't want to do it, and so the child throws a tantrum and they're flipping out, and what do we say? We say, okay, it's time for a timeout, and we put the child on the timeout chair, or we put them in the environment that they can be in, that they're safe, and it's timeout. When what we just did was teach the child, when you don't want to do this thing, throw yourself on the floor, and then we'll give you some quiet time by yourself, but you got out of doing the thing you wanted to do. Now, if you were wanting to get out of that thing, wouldn't you be willing to throw a tantrum to get out of it? I've said before, if I could throw a tantrum and be given a timeout so that I didn't have to do my taxes on a yearly basis, I would throw a tantrum every April 15th, and I would luxuriate in the timeout. I'd be like, woohoo, let's keep doing that. Our kids do that too. We're out of time. We're going to be back tomorrow. Dr. Doreen Granpeche, we're going to replay when she explains the DSM-5 to you. Make sure you watch that tomorrow, but we'll be back with Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy. Give your kiddos a hug from me. Bye-bye for now.